Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 11 of What If Deku Date Momo Yaoyorozu. If you notice some errors or some missing parts in the video, please tell me in the comment down below. Hope you'll enjoy the video. Today's the day, Momo said, looking into the mirror. She had just finished dinner and decided that she needed to hype herself up. She was going to tell Izuku that she loved him. Do I love him? I guess I don't know what being in love feels like. And Izuku definitely would feel uncomfortable at such a jump. I'll hold back on that for now. Unless he loves me. No. Momo, don't jump the shark now. The L word was definitely something she had no experience with. But she couldn't deny that as logical as she was a die-hard romantic at heart. Romance novels somehow always snuck their way into her collection, and she still was a teenage girl. Falling in love with someone was on her life checklist as a little girl, and she never exactly scratched it off. She just put it to the side. But now ring ring, hello? Hello mother. Momo. Good evening honey. To what do I owe the pleasure of this call? Or should I say who? Specifically a green-haired gentleman. Yukuna teased. How did you know? Darling, you went to a summer camp full of starlit skies and teenage hormones. I've seen your stash of novels. I knew you couldn't resist. I also knew that you couldn't hold out much longer. You listened to Unchained Melody for an entire week after you came back from the island, and you also said that the dress you took was your new favorite. So I'm assuming something happened with him there. Do I need to continue? No. So, what did you want to ask, dear? Mother. How do you know that you're in love? Oh, you are. No doubt about it. Momo nearly dropped her phone. What? How can you even tell? First of all, everything I just said was my first example. Second, you don't stop talking about him. Third, almost everything you've bought since the festival has been green. Fourth, I've personally seen the way you look in his eyes, and it's the same way your father and I look at one another. And it was also the way his mother and that thin man Toshinori look at each other. Fifth, you mutter constantly now. And you've mentioned how he does that. Sixth, ever since meeting that boy you've been happier than I've ever seen you. Seventh, okay, I get it. Mother, what if I say it and he freaks out? What if I have no idea what I'm even talking about? Momo Yaoyorozu. Most teenagers have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know what really love is. Midoriya doesn't. You don't either. But someone with experience. Someone who knows what love is telling you are a special case and that you're definitely in love. As much as your father doesn't want to admit it, he sees it too. You'll learn over time what this feeling truly means. I know that you and this boy are perfect for one another. So for now, take this feeling and go full force. Ride it until I hear wedding bells and the cries and coos of grandchildren and beyond. Mother, she said, blushing. Yukuna laughed. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. And if this scares Midoriya, it just means you have to take his hand and jump into the unknown together. Mother, this is the absolute most reckless you've ever told me to be. Why, yes it is. But you won't regret it. Now go and do it. You're a Yaoyorozu. We fight for and earn what we love. And if we can't, we just buy it. Momo giggled. Well, hopefully I won't have to throw cash in his face. Thank you, mother. I love you. Love. What a terrifying word. I can't handle this. They both laughed at the joke. I love you too, Momo. The call ended, and Momo looked back up into the mirror. This time, however, she wasn't wearing a concerned and nervous look. She was smiling brightly and blushing. Yeah. Today is the day. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Izuku didn't believe a single word he was saying. He'd been mumbling that to himself for the last 30 minutes. The moment he was told how the test of courage was going to work, he had asked to speak to Mandalay privately. And immediately begged on his hands and knees for her to pair him up with Momo. Mandalay decided to go ahead and do it as a thank you for saving Kota from falling at the hot springs. It was the least she could do. Besides, Momo has asked for the same thing 5 minutes ago, but he didn't need to know that. She had a feeling both had the same reasonings. Especially if Pixie Bob's remark to her about Izuku being claimed already had any indication. So now Izuku had been pacing back and forth trying to hype himself up for the confession. He knew what he had to do. Since Class 1B were the scarers, they would likely stay in one spot and wait for Wanna to pass by so they can jump out at them. Moving around would cause too much noise and ruin the scare. So all Izuku has to do is head into the forest, find a hidden and discreet little spot where no one from 1B will be at, and confess. Saying it was a lot easier than actually doing it. Alright. Midoriya and Yaoyorozu are up. Head on in. Tiger called out. Izuku's heart stopped. No. I've gotta have more time, right? I haven't even practiced what I'm gonna say. Shall we, Izuku? Momo said as she walked up to him. She was wearing a form-fitting white shirt with red accents on the sleeves and creati on the front, and khaki shorts that went down to mid-thigh. She wasn't making it any easier for him. Yeah. Let's go. He thought he was a dead man. They walked into the tree line and started their trek through the forest. Momo created a parabolic sonic listening device to listen for anyone getting close. After about 5 minutes, the light from camp was completely gone and they were all alone. Izuku turned to Momo, "Do you hear anything?" Momo did one last listen around the area. "No, nothing." Izuku looked around. They were in a small clearing about 6 by 6 feet surrounded by trees and bushes, and no one was near them. This might be his best chance. Maybe just a little longer. I should practice in my head what I'm going to say. Maybe I can. Izuku looked into the shadows of the forest and saw something that definitely wasn't good. It was just like from the sports festival. The eyes. The silhouettes. The ghosts, for lack of a better word. The past wielders of One for All were all there. Their glowing eyes watched him from afar and then slowly faded away. No, not now. Anytime but now. If the past users decided that now out of all times in the universe was the time to show up, it couldn't be good. Something was wrong. He needed to do this now. If the wielders were any indication, then Izuku had a feeling his chance was about to be taken from him. "Hey Momo, I really need to talk to you." "Hey Izuku? I really need to talk to you." Both stopped at the other's words. "Oh. You can go first." Izuku tried to be polite. "No, please, you go." "No, really, you, Izuku. Please go first. If you're about to say what I think you're going to say, then please go first," Momo said with an anxious smile. She walked forward until she was only inches from him. She looked directly into his emerald eye, hoping she was about to hear what she's wanted to hear for months. "It's just that. You. Sorry. It's nothing. Forget I said." Before Izuku could walk away, Momo grabbed his wrist and put him right back. "Izuku, I'm fairly certain, or at least I hope I know what you're about to say. I want to say it too. I'm tired of dancing around it. I danced around it for months before I finally accepted it for myself. I don't want any more waiting. So please, say what you want to say before I say it." I really don't think you know what I'm about to say, then humor me," Momo said with a smile. She slowly took his hands in hers. Izuku was panicking. He had no clue what to do. Do I just say it? Or do I start off with compliments and reasons? Do I say I like her? Or L-word her? I don't even know what it feels like to L-word someone. I mean, Mom once said something you feel when falling in love is your heart almost stopping whenever you see them. Do I? Izuku looked back up into Momo's eyes. His chest felt completely empty for a few seconds. It definitely felt like his heart stopped. Enough, Izuku. Just say it. Izuku furrowed his brow and closed his eyes. He opened them back up and looked Momo directly in her beautiful onyx eyes he adored. "Momo. You're hot." Momo's eyes widened and a single brow rose. "You were right, I didn't know what you were going to say. But thanks. No. Hot. Fire." Momo whipped around to see the entire tree line ignite in blue flames. An explosion rang throughout the entire forest. Suddenly gas started pouring in like fog. "Attention all students. This is Mandalay. The camp is under attack by villains. Do not engage in combat. I repeat, do not engage. Report back to the main lodge immediately." Izuku spun around to Momo, who was already creating gas masks. Behind her was the past wielders. They looked straight at Izuku and faded away once more. Damn it. Izuku was dashing through the forest at 10% with Momo on his back. They could see smoke billowing in the distance. It was right about where the remedial classes were taking place. The duo just hoped that Mr. Izawa was protecting them. The clearing where they entered the forest was now visible. And to their horror, they saw a bloody pixie bob being held by her head under a club, being held by a man. The man-woman Magni raised their club once more to bring it down on Ryuko's head. But when she brought it down, she hit nothing but dirt. Magni looked up to see Izuku and Momo near Mandalay and Tiger holding Pixie Bob bridal style. As soon as Tiger realized she was safe, he engaged Magni once more. "Pixie Bob, are you okay?" She barely opened her eyes and weakly replied, "Already saving pro heroes, huh? Damn, you really would have made a good husband." Humor was a good sign. Or she was possibly being serious. Either way, a sane response was good. Mandalay yelled to Izuku, "You two get her to the lodge and stay there. The villains already left the class wing, so it should be safe. Head to the medbay and wait for further instructions." The two turned to leave, but Mandalay stopped them once more. "Wait. Have either of you seen Kota?" Izuku's eyes widened in panic. "No, but I know where he is. I'll go get him. Please? As soon as you get him, take him with you back to the lodge." Mandalay ran back to aid Tiger against Magni and Spinner. Izuku nodded and turned to Momo, "I need you to take Pixie Bob back to the lodge while I go get Kota." "What?" Izuku, "No. I'm not letting you go out there alone. There's villains crawling all over the place, and they probably know our quirks from the festival. Especially if they're knowledgeable enough to find out the secret of where the camp was. We can take Pixie Bob back and then go find Kota." Izuku could see the determination in her eyes. He knew there was no arguing. But they needed to find Kota fast. Momo got back on his back, and Izuku jumped to 15%, ignored the slight sting, and zipped off to the lodge up the hill. Once he made it to the medbay, he carefully places Pixie Bob on one of the beds, wrapped her head up. Momo ran to the girl's room and grabbed Fushigiri. Once Izuku got back to Momo, he immediately picked her up bridal style and ran. He dodged his way through the trees to Kota's secret base. Momo knew Izuku had a connection with Kota, even if it wasn't reciprocated. He had explained Kota's past to her last night and his hatred for heroes and quirks. Izuku was desperate for a way to get through to Kota. She had told Izuku that sometimes situations like this were just not fixable with words alone. Like when they first officially talked to one another at the festival. It wasn't just the fact that Izuku spoke those words to her, it was also that face that he went out of his way to find her. They had barely known one another, and yet he was by her side in an instant to help. Izuku just hadn't done any action to truly help Kota yet. Words weren't enough. But it seemed like now was his chance to prove himself to Kota. Because when they emerged from the tree line to the cliffs, a villain was standing right in front of him about to attack. Momo could feel Izuku grow hotter from energy. He placed Momo down and shot like a bullet towards Kota and the villain, barely managing to grab Kota and get out of the way unscathed. He tried to run back around the villain and come back to Momo, but the villain had other plans. "Oh no, you don't." He grabbed Izuku by the back of the collar. While it only ripped part of Izuku's shirt off, he was tripped up and tumbled to the ground with Kota. Momo dashed to his side, pulled out Fushigiri, ready to defend them. She knew that they weren't allowed to fight, but they were quickly running out of options. "Ah, more kids to crush. Name's Muscular. Sorry, but if you don't mind, I want to kill the little one before you two. We have history." "Now I wait a minute." Muscular squinted at Momo for a second and then dug around in his pocket for a picture. "Oh hey. You're that Yaoyorozu girl. And you're Midoriya. You're both on my list. This is perfect. 3 birds with 1 stone. The boss wants us to take you alive so he can torture you himself for what you did to his hand. Well, actually just a girl. He wants you dead, Midoriya. Now all I need to do is find the Bakugo brat and my job is done. Well, besides whoever else I can kill while I'm here." Both teens' hearts stopped. They wanted Momo? And Bakugo? I gotta say, I'm impressed. I didn't think a little hero would have the guts to cut off someone's finger. Izuku got up, put Kota behind him, and whispered to Momo, "Momo, get on my back. We need to get out of I wouldn't ignore me if I were you." Izuku barely had time to put up his arms to block before being sent straight into the mountain. "Izuku!" Momo cried out. She swung her sword at Muscular, but he caught her wrist and squeezed. She could feel her bones start to crack from the pressure, causing her to drop her sword. Muscular picked her up and slammed her fist into her stomach, knocking the wind completely out of her. He slammed her into the ground and pushed her head down. "I need you alive, so you're gonna stay right here. But I'll leave you conscious so you can watch me kill the kid and your boyfriend. Get your hands off of her." Bam! Muscular felt some pain shooting through his face as he was sent back a few meters from Yaoyorozu. Izuku tried to grab Momo and Kota, but Muscular recovered quickly. "Not too bad, kid." He wrapped muscle around his legs and shot forward, kneeing Izuku in the stomach, grabbing his head and throwing him forward, sending him right back to his crater on the side of the mountain. "But not good enough," he said, wrapping more muscles around his body. "You got a little power in you, but you're mostly just speed. But I do want to see just how far you can go before I crush you. Now huh? A rock had just hit the back of Muscular's head. He turned around to look at Kota. Is that what you did to them too? Did you just toy with them before you killed them? Muscular scoffed. Kid, do you think I killed your parents for some philosophical reason or some shit? No, I killed them because I wanted to. I love to kill, simple as that. And they got in my way, so I just did what I enjoy. It's their fault that they intervened. How? How dare you? Muscular turned back around to Izuku, who was wobbly standing back up. You murdered his parents. And you won't even take the blame for it. I promise. I promise to defeat you and save Kota and Momo. Oh come on. More empty promises from stupid little heroes. You should know if you can actually do something before making a pro act. Muscular looked down to see Momo barely sitting up, Fushigiri straight through his calf, blood oozing from the impalement. You little bitch. He backhanded Momo away, sending her rolling back towards Kota. He pulled the sword out of his calf and threw it to the side. I told you. Muscular felt all of his hairs stand up. He felt like he had just rubbed socks on a carpet for a whole year. He turned around to see Izuku covered head to toe in green lightning. To keep your hands off of her. Muscular knew this couldn't be good. He brought out even more muscle to cover his body. Izuku kept slowly walking forward. It doesn't matter if I can do it. A hero's job is to risk his life and turn his promises into a reality. That's what a hero does. You said I was mostly speed? I'll give you speed. Lightning enveloped Izuku's entire body. Some arsed off and broke off bits of the landscape. Muscular tried to back away, but he heard metal clang behind him. He turned around to see Momo sweating and panting behind a freshly created cannon. The bottom half of her shirt torn off from the process, essentially making a crop top out of her t-shirt. Kota was standing fearfully behind her. He looked back to Izuku, the hero's eyes glowing. Full cowling, 25%. All Muscular knew was that 1 second Izuku was there. And a single blink of his eyes later, he wasn't. And then by the next blink, a punch with the power to bust a skyscraper hit his abdomen. Smash. Muscular was sent flying back into the air, only for a cannonball to the head intercept his ascension. And then came more pain. A punch, a kick, a double punch, a flurry of elbows, knees, and stomps, another cannonball, all before he even hit the ground. One final blow to his stomach sent Muscular flying high into the mountainside. Izuku fell to his knees. Momo and Kota ran to his side. She fell to her knees beside him, panting and out of breath. Izuku, are you okay? I should be asking you that. But to be honest, I can't stop my bones from rattling. And I'm also pretty sure most of them are fractured. Kota, are you okay? Yeah. Why? Why did you? They all whipped around to the mountainside. Muscular popped back out, his legs still flowing out blood, the same went for his face. Cuts, bumps, and forming bruises riddled his features. His scalp and mouth were bleeding terribly, the latter due to the loss of some teeth. The scariest part about it was that he had a wide smile on his face, and even more muscles layered over his body over and over again, making him nearly 3 times the size he was before. Hahaha. That was incredible. You're the real deal. Now I know I can give it everything I got. No. No, it can't be. Aye. Izuku looked back towards Momo and Kota, terror etched onto their faces. He needed to save them. He had to save Kota, he wanted to help him with the darkness in his heart. And Momo, he needed to save her so he can tell her how much she means to him. He needed to save her so he can wake up to her smile one day. If he was so lucky. I have to end this. Right here. Right now. I'll keep my promise and I'll make sure they're safe. Izuku pushed himself up. He stood tall towards Muscular. His body was aching and shaking. He had bruises and cuts all over from the rocks. His last attack turned his bones fragile. But that didn't matter. Momo, when we clash, take Kota and get back to the lodge. Wait for me there. What? Izuku, that's insane. I'm staying here to fight. You're running out of lipids. Every creation is draining you. Kota has to be saved. Both of you. I'm the only one with the strength to take him. Just run. I'll make this promise. You know I'll come back, because when I do, I'm going to tell you what I was going to say in the forest. Now. Go. Lightning sparked around him once more as he walked forward. Momo watched as his right arm became covered in glowing red lightning. Her heart dropped. She knew what that meant. It meant he was putting everything into one arm. Detroit. Muscular bent his legs and launched off the mountainside. Midoriya. Smash. If what they were just going through was hell, then Izuku just broke through all the levels and found a new one to suffer through. He could feel it, and Momo could see it. She saw the second he collided with Muscular, Izuku's arm bust open all over. A grayish purple took over his skin, and blood sprayed from multiple vein spots. He was pushing forward the best he could, but the best he could get was a stalemate with Muscular. Lightning was still pouring from his body at an unstable rate, and involuntary tears sprang from his eyes. The shockwave from their hit caused wind to rush by at multiple miles per hour. The rocks and dirt started to erode away, the landscape turning flat dust-covered. Aw, come on. Where's that speed from earlier, Midoriya? Don't you want to save your friends? Muscular yelled, pushing back. Izuku grit his teeth and yelled through the pain. I'm fine. I'm okay. He turned slightly back to Momo and Kota. You have to run. Go. I'm not going to let him get a single step past me. Run. Hahaha. Wow, kid. You really are awesome. More blood spurt from Izuku's arms. His legs were giving way. Shut up. Shut up, damn it. Momo watched in horror. She needed to move. If she didn't, Izuku was going to die. But what could she do? That guy was nearly invincible with all of that muscle. And it just kept growing. Momo, you have to think. Muscle. What severely damages muscle tissue? Too much heat can relax his muscles, but it will take too long. Cold will just tighten them up. There's so much muscle I can't reach his pressure points. What can I zap? Momo looked down. Izuku's sparks were zapping the ground next to her. Lightning. Electricity can cause burns to muscle and nerve damage. The muscles will spasm and painfully lock in. Momo saw her sword tumbling in the wind, rolling near her. You can keep your promise, Izuku. Because you're going to tell me, right after we beat him. Momo jumped over to her sword and picked it up. She created electrical tape and pushed for her key item. Come on. A capacitor, coils, circuits. Get the shape right. Please get the shape right. Out from her stomach popped out a small Tesla coil. Yes. She took the tape and jury-rigged the coil to the bottom of the blade. She pushed herself to create rubber gloves over each hand. She picked up her electric fushigiri and watched as Izuku's feet started to buckle. This is going to sting. For all of us. She charges down Muscular, who was luckily occupied and distracted by Izuku. She did her best to pinpoint exactly where Muscular's brachial plexus was. She jumped up high into the air and brought down fushigiri straight into Muscular's tissue. He reeled back in pain, screaming. Ah. Fuck. With that distraction, Izuku managed to gain his footing back and push Muscular back. His lightning sparking directly into the coil on Momo's sword. The muscles began to singe and burn. Momo could feel the shock hitting her, but she held strong. Muscular's muscles all began to lock up and constrict. His knees began to buckle. Momo couldn't hold on anymore, the electricity was getting to her. Muscular was still standing even with the lock-up and spasms. Izuku's arm was just too weak to fully finish it. But suddenly, water splashed all over Muscular. The lightning took full effect with the water as a traveling system. His entire body started to spasm and jerk around. Momo looked back to see Kota, water leaking from his hands. Let him go. Stop it. Momo yelled to Izuku, Izuku. Finish it. Izuku heard her words. He had seen Kota actually use his quirk to help save him. He needed to end this. He looked up to Muscular, determination in his eyes. No more. No more. You won't ever lay a hand on anyone. Ever. Again. He could see it in his mind. The lights all of one for all connecting together, giving him strength. One for all, 1,000,000%. Delaware. He flicked open his fist. Bursting Muscular's tissue apart. Detroit. He pulled back his arm, surging with energy. Smash. He rocketed his broken arm back at Muscular. The moment he made contact, all of his lightning shot directly into the Tesla coil. The villain began to flash green from the light. His skeleton flashing through his skin. Izuku's final punch, sending him straight into the mountainside. Most of the cliff going with him. When the dust and debris finally settled, Muscular lay face down on the ground. Eyes rolled into the back of his head, spit rolling down his chin. And yet somehow breathing. He was definitely one of the toughest beings alive. They won. Izuku screamed into the sky through the pain. He was about to fall down, but Momo ran up to him and caught him. He stood up straight, and they looked each other in the eyes for a bit, just in silence. They weren't sure why they did it. Maybe it was the fact that they had almost just died. Maybe it was the fact that they were pumped full of adrenaline. Maybe it was due to Momo's shirt turning into a crop top which Izuku found extremely attractive. Maybe they were just so sick and tired of waiting and didn't want to miss their chance again. They really didn't know. All they knew was that 1 second they looking at each other, thankful the other was alive. And the next they were hungrily kissing the other's lips. Neither had a clue how to do it, but they didn't care. They were in heaven. Izuku thought for a second that he was doing this without her consent, but that was immediately squashed when he felt Momo's arms wrapped around his neck and one hand repeatedly running through his hair. Momo didn't care that they were smearing blood on each other's clothes. She didn't care that Izuku's arm was covered in blood. All she cared about was that it was wrapped around her waist tightly and his lips continued to kiss hers. They kept going, both releasing the built-up frustration of waiting for so long. This being both of their first kisses, it was clumsy. But that didn't matter. Switching which side their heads leaned, separating for a split second for air, and then immediately continuing to kiss one another, both afraid that if their lips disconnected for too long the other would disappear. When they finally did separate lips, they leaned their foreheads together, eyes closed. Both panting from the little air they took in the last few minutes. Both opened their eyes again. Izuku spoke first. Momo. I'll love you. I really do. At least I'm almost certain. No. I mean I am. Sorry. It's just that everything about you is perfect. I know that must be really weird to hear. And I know I don't really know what love is, but I just think I know. At least about you. My life has had a lot of dark. But you made everything so much brighter. Every dark hole in my life you filled with your light. You have no idea how long I've been waiting to say and do that. Sorry, I'm not very good at this, but Izuku was stopped by Momo kissing him again. They disconnected and she spoke. I love you too, Izuku. So much. You mean everything to me. And neither of us might not know what love really is, but I'm willing to take that leap into the unknown if you are. Yes. Definitely. So. Are we? Boyfriend and girlfriend? Of course we are. Both smiled and blushed heavily. The duo leaned in and kissed again. The teens disconnected lips and turned their heads back to Kota, who was awkwardly standing by. Oh. Sorry Kota. Izuku tried to apologize. It's okay. The teens looked back into the forest. They had completely forgotten that villains were attacking. They needed to celebrate later. A crisis was still happening. Momo created a cast for Izuku to wear on his right arm and a brace for her wrist. She also created a new shirt for him. As much as she wanted to see the muscles of her new boyfriend, she still smiled at that. Some kind of covering was important. She pulled Fushigiri out of muscular and sheathed it. She also applied some bandaging to the villain so he wouldn't bleed out and die. She tied Fushigiri back on and created a sling for Kota to sit on Izuku's back. Izuku picked her up bridal style, but paused before he jumped back into the forest. Can we? One more time? Momo realized what he meant and blushed. She leaned up and kissed him again. This one with less built-up desperation and more care and passion. Ready? Yeah. Izuku bent down and jumped into the forest. Izuku, carrying Momo and Kota, dashed through the forest trying to reach the campgrounds to give Mandalay the info they learned from Muscular about Bakugo. There were even more problems now than before. First, Izuku's adrenaline was slowly coming down. His arms were now a dull pain, but he knew that pain would multiply soon enough. Second, it was terrible that the villains were apparently after Bakugo. And it was even far worse that they were after Momo. I get a girlfriend for 5 minutes and suddenly the universe realized its mistake and tries to fix it. The third, final, and potentially scariest problem was the previous wielders were back. But it wasn't like earlier tonight, and it wasn't like the festival. This time, they were everywhere. As Izuku dashed through the forest, every shadow and behind every tree was another pair of eyes on a silhouette. Izuku wanted to believe this to be a warning mechanism of some kind to tell him he was in danger. The only problem was that it had never done this before. Izuku had been in multiple dangerous situations before, and he never saw even the slightest sign of the previous wielders. Tonight, however, they wouldn't go away. They were trying to communicate with him. There was something else that was going to happen tonight, but Izuku was terrified to even think about what his predecessors were trying to tell him. He was so distracted he didn't even realize Momo was trying to get his attention. He looked to his girlfriend. I still can't believe it. Show he was listening. Izuku, we need to get back to the med bay. We'll drop Kota off and properly deal with your arms. Then we'll find Mr. Izawa and Mandalay to relay the message. Momo had been trying to convince Izuku for the last minute of her plan as they dashed through the forest. Momo in Izuku's arms and Koda on his back. Koda, being only a child, was the top priority. And Izuku had broken his arm twice. It was black and bleeding profusely before Momo made a cast. They couldn't go out and help anyone if his adrenaline ran out and the pain overtook him. Izuku, however, had other plans. We can't. We need to get that message out first. What if they already have Ka-chan? We can't, Izuku. He stopped running. Momo took his face in her hands and made him look at her. I know we have to save Bakugo, but you need to prioritize. Koda is just a child, your arm needs immediate medical attention, and Bakugo is a combat-efficient hero in training with an extremely powerful quirk. He also has Todoroki with him. They can handle themselves until we get to him. You have to see what's more important here. If you really look up to Bakugo, then you should believe he can hold his own for now. Izuku closed his eyes and furrowed his brow in frustration. He leaned into Momo's hand. I know. You're right. But we can't go to the med bay. Why not? Izuku looked ahead of them, because that's the med bay. Momo followed his line of sight through the trees to see the entire med bay engulfed in blue fire. As they got closer, they realized it wasn't just a med bay. It was the entire lodge grounds. The classroom building, the main lodge, the training grounds, all covered in an azure hellfire. Izuku gasped in a sudden realization. Pixie Bob. Momo's heart stopped at Izuku's words. They had left Pixie Bob inside the med bay. Koda realized why they were panicked about Pixie Bob, and tears began to well up in his eyes. Momo's heart then completely fell to her feet when she thought of something else. The remedial classes. They were inside. Momo could feel Izuku's chest move up and down even faster than before. He hurriedly outed and Koda down. I'll go get Pixie Bob. You get to the classrooms and see if anyone's there. Koda, go hide behind Crash. The trio turned to see an absolute miracle. A soot-covered Izawa broke through the doors of the med bay, carrying an equal soot-covered and unconscious Pixie Bob. He turned to see his students and Koda gaping at him. Good, you're all okay. Do you? Eraserhead looked at Izuku's arm to see it fully casted up. At the edge of the cast near his shoulder, a sickly black peeked its way out. I take it back. You're not okay. Your injuries. You did it again. I had to. I need it's fine. You're not getting in trouble for this. I'll take the fall for it. I need you to tell this to Mandalay anyway. You need to find Mandalay and tell her to relay to everyone that I give them permission to fight. Momo walked up to Eraser. Where's the rest of the class? A lot of them, and 1B are still in the woods. Ida, some of 1B, and the remedial classes have locked themselves into the panic room behind the classroom building, he said, pointing to the burning building. Well, except one. What do you mean? Momo asked, concerned. Izuku perked up at this as well. Izawa clenched his fists. The attack started here, on the campgrounds. I was giving the remedial classes. I'm not sure what happened next. All of a sudden blue flames covered the classroom, and when they cleared, Tokoyami was gone. Izuku and Momo looked at each other in a panic. Izuku spoke shakily, Mr. Izawa, I don't know why, but they're kidnapping specific students. Bakugo is a target, and so is Momo. We learned that from a villain we fought when saving Koda. This was the first time they had seen Mr. Izawa scared. His eyes had gone wide, and he looked to the ground in thought. He looked to Momo, you. Stay with Midoriya. As much as I want you two back at the panic room, I need to go and get as many of you back as possible. I need someone to find Mandalay, but I can't have anyone left by themselves. Koda, follow me. I'm going to get you and Pixie Bob to the rest of the students. Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, go find Mandalay and give her my message. As soon as you do that, get to the panic room immediately. Guide anyone you find on the way, understood? Yes, sir. They both said simultaneously. Izuku let Koda down, and they all parted ways. Wait. Izuku and Momo turned around to Koda's plea. Thank you. Both teens just smiled, nodded, and ran off into the forest. Momo jumped back into Izuku's arms, and the two sped off. So Izuku, we're ignoring Mr. Izawa's orders and finding the rest of the class after we give the message to Mandalay, right? Sorry, but that's what I plan to do. Momo just chuckled. I can't tell if you're a good influence on me or not. I tend to leave that impression. The duo began to see the clearing where they last left the Pussycats. Mandalay was about to be cut down by Spinner's massive sword collective. Izuku shot to 12% and leaped into the air. Smash! He drop-kicked the blades, breaking them all apart and shattering a few. Momo dropped down and pulled out Fushigiri. Spinner rushed to the ground and picked up the nearest weapon he could from his former sword. He grabbed the chainsaw and swung it around. Momo parried the tool, slid Spinner's foot out from under him, and brought her elbow down right onto Spinner's snout. He instinctively tried to bring his hands up to his bleeding nose, which gave Momo the chance to grab his wrists, turn him onto his stomach, and pin him to the ground. "You're the girl who fought Stain. And that boy is the one who Stain saved. You're both true heroes and shall not die today." Momo heard that and then looked at his attire and almost scoffed, "Copycats." Of course. She created handcuffs and placed them on the lizard man. Momo lifted him up to his feet and shoved him over to Mandalay. "You kids are more capable than we thought. Thank you, but there's something urgent we need to tell you. First, Kota is safe and with Mr. Izawa. Second, relay to everyone that Mr. Izawa gave us permission to fight the villains and that Katsuki Bakugo is their main target. Tokoyami has been taken and everyone needs to look out for him." Mandalay's eyes and mouth opened in shock. "A student's been taken. Don't worry, we'll get him back," Momo said, running back to Izuku. He bent down and she hopped onto his back. Izuku shot off again like lightning. Momo turned her head and yelled back, "Tell Mr. Izawa we're sorry for this." Mandalay ran after them. "Wait." But soon stopped after only a few feet when she realized it was a lost cause. While she was distracted, Spinner took this golden opportunity to roll backwards onto his feet and disappear into the trees. "Attention all students. Eraserhead has given the go-ahead to fight. I repeat, you have permission to fight back. The villains also have targets. They're after Katsuki Bakugo and have already taken Fumikage Tokoyami. Everyone watch your partners' backs and try to make it back to camp ASAP." Katsuki froze. He didn't even move when the tooth fucker shot another attack at him. Todoroki had to make an ice glacier to block to attack. "Bakugo, get back. They're after you." Katsuki put on a wide stiff grin. His eyes were wide open and strained. A nervous sweat dripped down his face. "Blah blah blah. Who gives a shit about that? We've been told to fight. So let's fight." Katsuki was clearly afraid. Moonfish shot more teeth at Bakugo, but the blonde sent out an explosion that shattered the teeth tendrils. He continued to repeatedly blast at Moonfish. Todoroki looked at the crazed, strained look on Bakugo's face. The desperation in his attacks. He wanted to get out of here and was fighting to hide it. Izuku and Momo could hear the explosions a mile away. "He's that way," Izuku said, turning on his heel and speeding off towards the noise. Once they reached the pathway, they could see Bakugo continuously throwing explosion after explosion while Todoroki was trying to help while also carrying an unconscious 1B student. Can Fushigiri cut through teeth? I guess we're about to find out. The duo raced forward to help their friend, but Bakugo saw them coming. He set off an explosion right in front of Izuku's feet, barely missing them. "No. I told you before during finals, I don't want your help, Deku." Momo got down from Izuku's back. "Now is not the time for this, Bakugo. Didn't you hear? I fucking heard. And I don't give a shit. I don't need your fucking help." Katsuki shot up into the air like a rocket and launched his way towards Moonfish. The villain tried to send more teeth, but Bakugo was already there. He gripped his hands around all the bases of the teeth tendrils that he could. "Die, motherfucker." Katsuki set off one of the biggest explosions he could. He was sent back to the ground from the force of it, and Moonfish was lost in the smoke and fire. They heard another thump hit the ground. The smoke cleared for the teens to see Moonfish on the ground unconscious. Most of his teeth were blown off, and the front half of his tongue was burnt near black. Katsuki stood back up. "I told you." Todoroki side-eyed him. "You could have set the trees on fire. Look around you, Dumbus. They're already on fire. What's it matter if I add a little more?" Momo furrowed her brow. "Oh. So if a civilian is injured during a villain attack, it's okay to get them hurt even more? Great hero work." Katsuki snarled at her. "That's not what I meant. But if that civilian is you, then maybe it was bitch stop." All eyes turned to Izuku. "This really isn't the time for all of you to bicker. There are still more people out in the woods and we need to save them. Splitting up is a bad idea, we need to stick together. Especially with two targets here, and fighting each other isn't going to help." Todoroki raised his eyebrows. "Wait, two targets? We learned that I'm also a target," Momo informed them. Izuku looked back to Bakugo. "So please stay with us. The more people we have, the less of a chance either of you have of getting caught." Bakugo acted like he was reluctant, but in reality he was almost relieved to have others around for once. "Fine. Thank you." Oh. And I know you've said before you don't want my help. But I also said to stop calling Momo that word. We both know what happened when you did it last time. So leave my girlfriend alone. Izuku hurriedly turned around and started to lead the way. Todoroki put his hands on his knees and sighed in relief. Finally. You two are finally together. It was honestly getting on my nerves. He turned away and whispered to himself, now all that's left to do is dad might. Bakugo rolled his eyes and followed behind. Momo caught up to Izuku and looked at him. He was shaking in fear. He whispered to Momo, I can't believe I just did that. He's gonna kill me. Why did I do that? Momo softly smiled and kissed his cheek. That's just your instincts to protect your significant other kicking in. We've been doing that for a while now. Are we gonna save everyone else's asses? Or are we gonna have to sit here and watch you two make out? Because if it's the latter, I'll go ahead and get kidnapped, Bakugo said, marching past them. That is all for today's video. Thank you for watching. And please comment down below what you guys want to see next. I'll see you in the next video.